On a chilly night in 1847, a young maid moved silently through the grand manor she had served since childhood. Bearing scars of endless cruelty and stolen dreams, she had watched the mistress flaunt power and delight in torment, every slight carving deeper into her resolve. What could push an innocent servant to commit a crime so dark? And could you live with the weight of such vengeance? The night air presses cold against the stone walls of the manor, carrying the faint scent of wet earth and distant smoke from the village chimneys. It is 1847, and the world outside is still tethered to old hierarchies, where birthright and wealth shape every whispered command. The manor rises like a fortress of privilege, amid a sprawling patchwork of farmland and woods, its tall windows glowing golden against the darkness. Inside, the halls are polished, echoing with the soft murmur of servants attending to tasks unseen. Silk drapes sway gently in the draught, and the smell of roasting meat and warm butter drifts from the kitchens to the drawing rooms where the masters dine, untroubled by the suffering that thrives in the spaces beneath their feet. In the shadowed servants' quarters, a young maid sits on a rough wooden bench, her hands raw from endless scrubbing, her wrists dotted with bruises and faint scars from previous reprimands. She is 16, small in frame, with hair tied back so tightly that it aches at the roots, but her eyes are sharp, dark, and calculating. She has grown up in these halls, learning each floorboard's creak, each key's turn, and each master's temper. Her life is a study in endurance, early mornings hauling water, endless sweeping, polishing silver until her hands bleed, listening to whispered laughter that is never meant for her. Each day blends into the next, a monotony of obedience and suppression, yet beneath the weight of servitude, a mind sharp and patient observes everything, catalogues every slight, every opportunity. The mistress, Lady Veronique, floats through the manor like a specter of entitlement. Her silk gowns brush the floor, spilling perfume and wealth into every room she crosses. Her voice is sweet in its cadence, yet it carries the sting of a whip in every word. She delights in the discomfort of others, from servants trembling in their boots to her husband, the master, who turns a blind eye to her cruelty, focusing instead on the affairs and indulgences that fill his life with pleasure. The contrast between her world and the maid's is stark. The warmth, light, and abundance of their rooms, soft cushions, golden cutlery, rich carpets, stand in violent opposition to the damp, drafty, dimly lit quarters the maid calls home. Her world smells of mildew and dust, her mattress a thin pallet of straw. The master's laughter drifts down corridors as she works, sharp and cruel, a reminder of her place. Every day is a choreography of survival. She moves silently, anticipating the mistress's moods, reading the master's sighs, noting the jealousy and vanity that saturate their interactions. She learns which glasses are most prized, which curtains conceal the most secrets, and which footsteps signify wrath. The maid has no allies among her peers. The other servants either tremble before the mistress, or keep to themselves, wary of the wrath that can fall on anyone who disobeys or catches unwanted attention. This life of endless vigilance, the constant assessment of threats and opportunities, has hardened her, sharpened her senses. The world beyond the manor is a place of stories and rumors, glimpses through the kitchen window of children playing barefoot in mud, the smell of wildflowers carried by the wind. That freedom, that innocence, has been denied to her, yet it festers in memory, a bitter sweetness she clings to in the lonely hours before dawn. Her mind is a repository of the cruelties inflicted upon her. A dropped tray, a spilled liquid, a whispered insult in the kitchen, each incident etches itself into her memory. Lady Veronique's eyes flash with disdain when the maid stumbles, her tongue curling in words that leave invisible welts. The master's laughter follows every public humiliation, a muted applause for her suffering. Even the smallest act of perceived defiance is met with punishment, whether a cut across the hand with a silver knife, or the sharp sting of a cane. These injuries are both physical and symbolic, reinforcing her place in the hierarchy. Yet in quiet moments alone with her thoughts and the faint light of the moon streaming through a cracked window, the maid dreams of agency, of reclaiming dignity, of tipping the scales in a world that has known only her submission. The manor itself seems alive, complicit in the oppression. The walls carry whispers, and the wooden floors seem to sigh under the weight of secrets. Every corner is a witness, every candle flicker a reminder of surveillance. The very air feels thick with history and power, steeped in wealth accumulated through generations, untouched by empathy. She feels its pulse in her veins, the heartbeat of inequality, the rhythm of exploitation that dictates every movement she makes. This environment shapes her, molds her resilience, and sharpens her mind in ways invisible to the masters who believe themselves untouchable. In this world, even the smallest detail matters. A misplaced item could earn a beating, A glance in the wrong direction could trigger humiliation. The maid knows every servant's role, every master's idiosyncrasy, every secret passage, and every hidden drawer. She has learned to move like water, silent, adaptable, observing with the patience of a predator. Though the prey in this story has been herself for years, she knows the rhythm of the household, the timing of meals, the pattern of rounds, and the subtle shift in Lady Veronique's expression when she suspects defiance. This mastery of observation, of invisible power, begins to seed a new awareness, a possibility that one day the power imbalance can be reversed. It begins with a single act, small but monumental in its cruelty, the spark that ignites the tinder of suppressed rage. A spilled goblet of wine, the maid blamed despite her careful steps, and the mistress laughs as if witnessing some private amusement. The master turns his eyes from the scene, preoccupied, leaving the maid alone in the humiliation that drips like venom into her chest. In that moment, the quiet endurance of years fractures. She feels the anger, sharp and hot, twist into a cold, deliberate focus. It is no longer simply survival. It becomes strategy, a reckoning waiting in the shadows. She watches the mistress more closely now, cataloging every weakness, every excess, every predictable temper. Lady Veronique, though cruel, is vain and overconfident, certain in her invulnerability. The master, indulgent and negligent, leaves gaps in the household's defense, trusting servants only superficially. Each minor injustice, each whispered insult, is now fuel, a step in a larger reckoning forming in the maid's mind. She begins keeping a mental ledger of wrongs, each punishment, each humiliation, each slight, noted and remembered with surgical precision. This act of observation is no longer mere survival, it is preparation. The other household members, seemingly insignificant, reveal themselves as tools or obstacles. The cook, loyal to her own interests, can be observed and subtly manipulated. Fellow servants, fearful and silent, provide information unwittingly, each word and glance recorded for later use. The mistress's social gatherings expose further weaknesses. The mistress's vanity, her dependence on opulent rituals, her reliance on the master's approval. Every indulgence and every arrogance becomes a building block for the maid's plan. The transformation within the maid is both psychological and emotional. Fear is no longer the primary motivator. It becomes a tool, a mask worn to navigate the household while planning quietly. Anger is tempered by patience, resentment sharpened into precision. At night, she lies on her straw mattress, recalling every slight, turning the images over like stones in her hand. The smell of damp straw mingles with the faint aroma of lavender from the mistress's gown, a cruel juxtaposition that underscores her subjugation. She rehearses movements in the quiet dark, imagining the sounds of confrontation, the rhythms of control. Each rehearsal reinforces the growing belief that the scales of power can indeed tip. Foreshadowing grows in subtle details. A dripping candle, a cracked mirror, the shiver of wind through an open window. These small sensory cues begin to echo the looming chaos. The maid notices the mistress's vanity as she preens in gilded mirrors, the way she relies on ritual and routine. These details, once mere background, now take on strategic significance. She learns the exact placement of knives in the kitchen, the timing of guards' rounds, the patterns in the master's movements. Knowledge becomes her weapon, observation her shield. The maid's inner monologue deepens her characterization. She questions morality, justice, and inevitability, pondering whether survival alone is sufficient, or whether action, deliberate and precise, is required to reclaim dignity. She acknowledges the danger, the potential for failure, and the consequences, yet her resolve strengthens. There is a sense of destiny in her thoughts, an almost poetic recognition that the long years of subjugation were the forging ground for this moment of transformation. Interactions with the antagonists further heighten tension. The mistress continues to flaunt cruelty, turning minor mistakes into public spectacle, her laughter echoing through the halls. the master's apathy, once a source of frustration, now becomes a tactical element to exploit. Minor servants' whispers, the scent of wine on Lady Veronique's breath, the flicker of candlelight across polished surfaces. Each small observation is filed away, a piece in the architecture of eventual reckoning. Her resolve manifests in physical preparation as well. She maintains her duties with precision, masking her transformation behind the guise of obedience. She practices movements, notes timings, and rehearses reactions to unexpected interruptions. Even the textures of the manor, the polished floors, the soft carpet edges, the cold brass handles, become familiar territory to navigate with stealth and efficiency. The contrast between the luxurious world of the masters and the stark practical environment of the servant's life sharpens her skills, creating a dual awareness of beauty and cruelty. As days pass, the psychological tension thickens. She begins to anticipate not only actions but emotions, the mistress's impatience, the master's indulgence, the servant's fear. Each nuance is a note in a symphony she alone composes, a foreboding melody that builds toward inevitable climax. Every smell, sound, and sight, the metallic tang of knives, the soft rustle of silk, the acrid smoke from the hearth, becomes part of a heightened perception that guides her preparation. The maid's transformation is near complete. The victim of years of oppression is now a strategist, a quiet force, patient yet inexorably moving toward justice as she perceives it. She rehearses mental and physical maneuvers in secret, envisions confrontations with each antagonist, and imagines the liberation that might follow. The tension is almost unbearable, a taut thread stretched across the manor, ready to snap at the right moment. Even in seemingly mundane moments, folding linens, serving tea, sweeping floors, her mind is active, planning, noting, waiting. The mundane becomes strategic, her every movement deliberate, a piece of a larger orchestration. She is invisible yet omnipresent, patient yet ready. The atmosphere of the manor, once suffocating, now serves as the theater for her ultimate act. Shadows, candlelight, and quiet corridors are allies in her mental rehearsal, and the weight of years of abuse crystallizes into a clarity of purpose. By the close of this act, the maid is no longer simply a servant, but a force shaped by cruelty, observation, and patience. The household continues unaware, going about routines with casual arrogance, blind to the storm gathering beneath their feet. Outside, the wind sighs through trees, carrying faint smells of wet soil and distant smoke, echoing the tension within. Inside, silence and anticipation mix with fear and hubris, setting the stage for what is to come. The transformation is complete, the stage set, and the first threads of the coming reckoning are poised to unravel. The night is thick with fog as the maid moves through the corridors. She knows better than anyone, her bare feet silent against polished floorboards. Each step is calculated, measured, a rhythm she has rehearsed countless times in her mind, until it is perfect. She has waited years for this, cultivated patience from endless suffering, sharpened observation into strategy. Every detail of the manor now serves her purpose. The flicker of candlelight in the hallway guides her path, shadows stretching and twisting across the walls like silent witnesses to the reckoning. The scent of burning wax mingles with the lingering aromas of roasted meat and sweet perfumes, and she inhales each one as if memorizing the essence of the lives she is about to disrupt. She pauses outside the mistress's chamber, listening to the soft rhythmic breathing of Lady Veronique asleep behind silk curtains. The gold-embroidered drapes catch the dim light of a single lamp, making the room seem like a shrine to arrogance and cruelty. The mistress's vanity, her obsession with perfection, has become her vulnerability. The maid's hands brush over the polished brass handle of the door, the metal cold and smooth beneath her fingers. She remembers every insult, every humiliation, every slight glance that once reduced her to trembling. And yet, in this moment, her heart beats not with fear, but with calm purpose. Years of oppression have transformed into a deliberate resolve, and every muscle in her body aligns with her intent. Her mind races through contingencies, each one meticulously calculated. If the mistress wakes, if the master intervenes, if a servant notices, every potential disruption has been considered, every variable accounted for. She feels the thrill of control surge through her, a heady intoxication after years of voiceless servitude. The dagger in her hand is small, unassuming, yet it carries the weight of justice. It is not mere violence, it is the culmination of long years of patience and suffering, a poetic reckoning. She visualizes each movement, each reaction, each sound, the soft gasp, the rustle of silk, the abrupt stillness of a life ending. Her breaths are shallow but steady, her mind a calm storm of anticipation. She enters the chamber with the silent precision of a predator. The mistress stirs, a faint murmur escaping her lips, but the maid's movements are fluid, unhurried, methodical. There is a surreal clarity to every moment, as if time itself has slowed to honor the gravity of her act. The dagger moves, guided by purpose and memory, and the mistress cries out only once before the room falls silent, the air thick with the metallic tang of blood. The maid steps back, breathing evenly, observing the aftermath with detached calm. It is not chaos, it is justice, precise and deliberate. The master's study is next. He sits unaware, immersed in ledgers and letters, the lamplight casting long shadows across the pages. The maid approaches with the same meticulous care, every step silent, every intention clear. His laughter from earlier, careless and indulgent, echoes faintly in her memory, fueling a cold satisfaction. She has prepared for this, watched him from the shadows, memorized his routines, the placement of every object, the timing of his attention. She strikes with precision, ensuring the act reflects the specific wrongs he has committed, the neglect, the complicity, the arrogance. Each movement is swift, deliberate, a choreographed expression of retribution. The metallic scent of the dagger mingles with the paper and ink, and the master's eyes widen briefly in disbelief before stillness claims him. The household begins to stir with unease, as subtle alarms ripple through the manor. Candles flicker, doors creak, servants murmur in hushed panic. Yet the maid moves as a shadow, invisible and unchallenged, navigating corridors with intimate knowledge of every nook and cranny. She confronts minor antagonists with the same calculated deliberation, each encounter measured, each act purposeful. The kitchen, the servant quarters, the hidden passages, every space becomes a stage, every sound a cue. There is no hesitation, only the fluid execution of a long-held plan. Her mind does not waver. She recalls each humiliation, each stolen moment of joy, and transforms them into meticulous strategy. She imagines the mistress's laughter, the master's scorn, and the fear she has endured, and allows them to shape the rhythm of her actions. She moves through the manor like a ghost, her presence sensed only in the shift of air, the faint rustle of fabric, the brief glint of steel. Each antagonist is confronted, each act of cruelty returned with precise justice. The dagger, the careful timing, the understanding of routines, all converge in a seamless choreography. As she moves through the halls, the atmosphere thickens. The scent of blood mingles with the warm, lingering odors of the household, creating a tension that presses against every surface. The shadows stretch long, dancing in candlelight, reflecting the duality of her existence, the servant she has been, and the force she has become. Every step is deliberate, every glance calculated, every sound accounted for. The manor, once a place of oppression, now becomes a theater of controlled chaos, its corridors echoing with the silent resonance of justice enacted. Her internal monologue underscores every movement. She contemplates morality, justice, and the inevitability of consequence, weighing each act with precision. Violence is not arbitrary, it is poetic, symbolic, a mirror of the wrongs she has endured. She acknowledges the danger, the potential for discovery, yet her resolve is unwavering. The calm determination in her eyes is matched by the precision in her hands, the meticulous timing of every motion, and the careful orchestration of events. She is no longer a victim,
She is the architect of her own reckoning. The climax builds as she reaches the final antagonist, a minor yet insidious figure who has tormented her subtly for years. The confrontation is deliberate, precise, the culmination of psychological observation and physical preparation. She allows the person a moment of recognition, a fleeting awareness of inevitability, before executing the act with controlled precision. The metallic scent of steel mingles with fear, and the quiet suffocating tension of the household thickens around her. Each act of retribution is symbolic, reflecting the unique cruelty of each antagonist. As the first light of dawn begins to filter through the high windows, the maid pauses, surveying the manor. Silence hangs heavy, broken only by the faint whisper of wind and the distant calls of birds awakening. The acts are complete, yet the weight of what she has done presses upon her, tempered by a sense of inevitability and poetic justice. The manor, once oppressive and vibrant with the master's power, lies in stillness, a testament to the calculated force of a long-suppressed spirit finally unleashed.
The aftermath is immediate and disorienting. News spreads through the village and surrounding estates with the speed of wildfire, carried in whispers, rumors, and frightened speculation. The manor, once a symbol of comfort and privilege, becomes a locus of fear and fascination. Those who remain alive move cautiously, their routines disrupted, their authority fractured. Outside, the wind sweeps through barren branches, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and the residue of the night's violence, and the maid moves among it all like a shadow, unseen, absorbed into the anonymity of ordinary life. The authorities arrive, their steps heavy against the stone and gravel, faces drawn and serious. Investigation unfolds with the meticulous pace of official procedure. Servants questioned, neighbors interviewed, letters scrutinized. The maid, though elusive, is at the center of every whispered theory. Her careful planning has ensured that direct evidence is scarce. She is a phantom in the narrative of chaos, a name spoken in speculation rather than fact. The tension between discovery and evasion underscores every moment, the world outside both alarmed and fascinated by the disruption of established hierarchy. The trial, should it occur, becomes a spectacle, a public theater for justice, morality, and fascination. Observers speculate endlessly on motive, method, and morality, their voices carrying judgments and fear. The maid's story, stripped of unnecessary detail, is recounted with dramatic flourishes. The oppressed servant who took control, who enacted justice with precision, who defied a world designed to suppress her. Her actions are examined through a lens of morality, with some condemning, others admiring the cunning and resolve that enabled her to execute a perfect reckoning. Cultural context heightens the resonance. The story spreads across the region, seeping into folklore, cautionary tales, and whispered legend. Servants tell it to each other in hushed tones, a blend of warning and inspiration. Villagers recount it over fires and markets, embellishing details with each retelling, painting the maid as both specter and hero. Her legacy is not merely the acts of the night, but the psychological and symbolic disruption of rigid social hierarchies. She becomes a figure larger than life, emblematic of justice against oppression, a symbol of the consequences of unchecked cruelty. The lasting impact reverberates through generations. Families who once relied on unquestioned authority begin to reconsider the structures that sustain hierarchy. Servants, empowered by the tale, recognize their own potential for agency. The manor itself, abandoned or repurposed, carries the memory of that night in its walls, whispers echoing in the corridors like ghosts of retribution. History, oral and written, preserves the narrative with reverence and fascination, chronicling a single act of calculated vengeance that forever altered perceptions of power and justice. Emotionally, the story resonates because it is rooted in human truth, the universal tension between oppression and agency, suffering and action, fear and courage. Audiences are drawn to the intensity of the maid's transformation, the meticulous orchestration of her plan, and the visceral justice executed. They are compelled by the contrast between her humility and her strategic genius. the ordinary and the extraordinary intertwined in every movement, every decision, every act of the night. Final moments are reflective, tinged with the bittersweet weight of consequence. The maid, now an almost mythic figure, contemplates her journey. Every bruise, every insult, every stolen moment of her life has led to this convergence of preparation, observation, and execution. She considers the cost, the moral burden, the solitude, the necessity of secrecy, but also the clarity and agency she has reclaimed. The world will remember her, not merely as a servant or a killer, but as a force who challenged injustice with deliberate, poetic precision. The story ends with a lingering question, a call to reflection for all who hear it. Could such darkness exist within anyone, waiting beneath years of oppression? Could patience, observation, and quiet endurance transform into calculated agency, altering the course of history? These questions resonate long after the tale ends, ensuring the legend endures. Whispers in the wind, candlelight flickering against old walls, and tales told across generations all carry her story forward, a narrative of poetic justice that transcends time. The Maid's tale spreads beyond the manor, inspiring both caution and admiration. Artists sketch interpretations, writers dramatize the events, and storytellers embedded in local culture. The moral complexity fascinates, a figure simultaneously innocent and fearsome, ordinary yet extraordinary, a reminder that power, cruelty, and justice are intertwined in human experience. Her legend is preserved not merely in history books but in the collective imagination, a story both horrifying and captivating, teaching that oppression may seed the most meticulous forms of resistance. And as the sun rises over the village, casting long shadows across the streets and fields, the story lingers. It hangs in the air, in whispers and reflections, in the quiet awareness that even the lowest servant may carry within them a storm capable of reshaping the world. The tale of the maid who drowned the mistress in her own blood is remembered not for the violence alone, but for the calculated justice, the psychological precision, and the enduring proof that patience, observation, and willpower can topple the mightiest of oppressors. What would you do if your endurance finally demanded a reckoning? Could you recognize the same fire within yourself, waiting quietly for its moment?